poker, you're not really building equity in anything. You're kind of trading time for dollars. I kind of got to the top of that. I was the biggest game that ran regularly in the world. There was not a bigger game.
Brian Tate made millions as a professional high-stakes poker player. Then he walked away from the table and built Oats Overnight. Today, the company is one of the fastest growing food brands. He applies the same discipline, patience, and risk control that made him money in poker to building one of the fastest growing consumer brands in America.
It started out as a side project, just a distraction from poker. Yeah, so learn a lot, right? I had no experience in food, e-com, manufacturing. As we scale, and we're constantly breaking down systems, rebuilding those systems in real time. We intentionally have no brand guidelines. We do a lot of things that look a little crazy. Of course, we're big fans of testing and learning when you can unwind.
Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
I really appreciate you taking the time. So how did you become a professional poker player?
So my journey started with a game called Magic: The Gathering, if you're familiar with that, competitive card game. In my teens, I played Magic: The Gathering on the Pro Tour, and huge nerd, as you can imagine. Not a lot of money in Magic. You're playing for promotional booster packs and things like this. And so when the poker boom happened in 2003, Chris Moneymaker, this accountant, won the World Series of Poker. And it seemed like overnight, a lot, ESPN was showing live poker everywhere. And, the online poker sites started advertising the US market and really just exploded this whole industry. I was in the right place at the right time to jump from Magic to poker. Of course, with buy-ins came bigger prizes, and online poker was really born. And so I started in, I was just under 18 at the time, but right around that age when I got started.
Right around that age. We'll say over 18, right? Yeah. We'll say over 18, right? Publicly, I'd imagine. Although I don't know what I guess the gambling age, it isn't 18. Is it? Or
I think it's 18. Yeah.
Oh, it is 18. Okay, cool. So publicly, yeah. So 18. All right. How did you find that you were actually getting good enough that it made sense to actually turn pro? Or what does that even kind of mean, turning pro? Or when was that kind of moment that you figure, okay, this can actually be like my full-time career?
Yeah, so I think for pro can mean a lot of things. There's pro players that make $50,000, $60,000 a year grinding small stakes poker. That's a tough way to make a living, by the way. Lots of variance behind that number. Not a fun way to make $50K. But there's also pros that make high hundreds of thousands, maybe millions a year. So I think early on, didn't know what this meant. Didn't know the risk management side of this. Was really just playing a game and trying to get good at it. So I think around the time where my friends and I started making money enough to pay some bills and, felt good about building a bit of a bankroll. It started to get a little more serious, although I'd still say in the first few years, it was more gambling than professional poker. Had a lot to learn about bankroll management, risk management, of course, all very important lessons on that journey.
So, but by the time you kind of hung it up, you made nearly $10 million. Is that right? As a professional poker player?
Yeah.
And so why did you decide to call it quits and kind of go all in on Oats Overnight? And I guess what was the story behind starting Oats Overnight from the beginning?
Yeah. So poker is very, the steps are very clear. Like as you grow through the poker industry, the stakes are really the limits that you play, how much money you can earn. So, a $20, $40 game is half as big as a $40, $80 game. You can make more money at $40, $80 limit, but the game's tougher. And so as you grow through your professional career, you might go from 40-80 to 1-200 to 2-400. It's very clear what table you're playing at. It kind of indicates the level of play that you're competing at, which is pretty obvious. The thing is the money filters up. You take a shot at the higher stakes game, you usually lose because you don't know what you don't know. You have to go back, earn your money at the lower stakes game, kind of figure out what you need to learn and kind of reverse engineer those strategies at that higher stakes level. Eventually, of course, you start catching on, you start making a little more money. Some of the concepts may click a little more and you might stay there and actually start earning at that level. And so that 12-year period where I was building in poker, just leveling up from the smallest stakes to the biggest game that ran regularly in the world for the game type that I played living in Vegas. At the top of that, I was playing the biggest game that ran, and there was not a bigger game that would run regularly. So I kind of got to the top of that mountain, which was an awesome experience, by the way. Didn't want to sit sedentary at a poker table 12 hours a day. And so was kind of looking for the next thing. I think when there was no next clear step in the poker journey, it started making me lose a little passion for that journey. And I was in my late 20s and wanted to build something with poker. You're not really building equity in anything. You're kind of trading time for dollars. Very cool experience, again, competing there. But I wanted to build something. And so I was making a homemade version of overnight oats, similar to how Oats Overnight is today, more milk, more protein. So it's really convenient and fit my macro needs, my nutrient needs. I was trying to work out as much as possible. I was sitting at a table for so long every day. And it was great. It was kind of right in front of me. I invested in a few friends' companies, dabbled a little bit in some investments, but didn't find anything I liked, and ultimately started Oats Overnight. And we launched in 2016. So started out as a side project, just a distraction from poker that I could invest some time in, which quickly picked up in the early days.
Was there a moment that when you were making and having oats, was there a moment that you actually thought, okay, maybe this could become, obviously it's turned into a incredible brand, but were there moments that maybe gave you confidence that this could actually become a real business, or doing, for example, like little tests to kind of build that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, love the product. Myself, my friends, and I were making different versions of this product. I think you kind of assume that everything's been made. As a consumer, I didn't have the idea right away to start this as a company.
What was different? What was different to how you were making the oats?
Yeah, so overnight oatmeal was gaining a little popularity on the coast. It was still, cold oatmeal was still very weird at this time, mainstream. But we were making it with more milk, more protein, in a shaker cup. So it was spoon free, like our version is today, where the traditional recipes were more mason jar and spoon, kind of crafty, didn't travel well, right? Carrying around this mason jar. And so we opted for the shaker cup, more milk, more protein, and it really kind of a protein shake oatmeal hybrid. When looking for a prepackaged version, kind of being sick of measuring and prepping it, we were just shocked to find it didn't exist. And so right away, it was sort of a light bulb moment to bring this to the world.
Got it. That makes sense. Well, what were like those early days like after you decided that you wanted to go all in, or to start Oats Overnight? No pun intended, obviously. But what were kind of like the first steps that you had to do?
Yeah, so learn a lot, right? I no experience in food, e-com, manufacturing, crazy enough to kind of start the facility as well ourselves. We couldn't work with co-mans. I was emailing people and calling people and, couldn't speak the language of manufacturing. So
yeah, I was about to say, why did you vertically integrate from the get-go? Was it because no co-mans would kind of take you on, or what was the reason?
That was basically it. I mean, we making this tabletop, we could do a scoop of flax, scoop of chia, some protein, some oats. So we really constructing it by hand. What we'd later learn is that it was just hard to do that at scale with like the powder component relative to some of the inclusions. Co-mans weren't really set up for this. And so we would have had to invest in a lot of like new machinery, and the barrier was pretty high to get started. That said, I knew how to do it at a tabletop setting. So we just recreated that in a small 2,000 square foot facility, hired an advisor to help us with regulatory, like registering with the FDA and all the traceability and lot control required for those early things, some of the quality programs at the early stages. Just kind of dove right in. Again, learned the hard way. Pretty much everything learned the hard way. Made so many mistakes. But Googling everything at the time. I wish ChatGPT was around. Would have been a little faster. We were talking to all the wrong vendors, all the wrong manufacturers. We ended up just doing it all ourselves, and glad we did. I mean, now we've controlled our own destiny through this last decade of operating, and it served us really well. Now, of course, there's a lot of benefits to owning manufacturing, and we've continued to kind of push those edges for our benefit. Yeah,
and talk me through a little bit about what that was like. You were renting equipment. I think you put like $500K right into the initial into brand equipment. Obviously, taking my batches. I think you had your mom doing fulfillment, and then you also had like your some of your poker friends as well that were a part of it, and I think are still part of it. What do you remember from those kind of scrappy months?
Yeah, I mean, we just continued to get things wrong. So, we ordered our boxes, our corrugate boxes were just over £1, and So our shipping costs were like $2 higher with USPS than they needed to be for the sub 1 pound cost. So we were X-Acto knifing the corners off the boxes, every single one, to try to get it just under a pound. I mean, just so many situations like this where, again, we knew this was not optimal, but just had to make it work. And of course, lots of long hours. I mean, I was making the oats myself during the day, like packaging everything, blending it up in this little 100 unit ribbon blender. And then, doing Facebook ads and email flows at night. Talking to customers on Facebook through ad comments, answering emails for customer service. Like you mentioned, hired a few friends that played poker professionally that wanted to try something new. Hired my mom to help run fulfillment. Fun early days, but some of the team that we brought on from my past life left, and it wasn't a fit. Some are still here, so pretty cool to see all that evolve.
That's awesome. What was the approach for the online market? Because I know that you started DTC. I know that's still a massive channel for you all. What was the approach there in terms of getting your name out, distribution, marketing? And this also new kind of idea in terms of how oats can be consumed, not using a spoon, how it's a bit more of a shake. How did you express that in your marketing?
Yeah, so we always wanted to be, you got to grab attention in marketing. And so it was easy for this format to grab attention, like playing on drinkable oatmeal and just how differentiated that is. A lot of ways to market it. We started out with just really small budgets on Facebook. So $20 a day or something, and would see pretty good conversions. Of course, this was probably the tail end of the glory days of Facebook advertising, like 2016, 2017. So we're still seeing fraction of the cost for CPMs and $10, $15 CACs. So right away the economics made sense to continue scaling. So we scaled pretty quickly through that first year. I know we did like $1.5 million in revenue our first year. Wow. Just piecing away at it and learning a lot. Again, iterative is one of our core values, and happy to chat more on that. But we test and learn everything, iterative with every single element of the business. And ads always shined as one of the areas that we needed to get right. I think one of the things that we've done well is really creative. From the beginning, we've taken a really hands-on approach to creative, specifically on direct response, digital marketing, and always have diversified creative in pretty meaningful ways. And, always try to push the boundaries on what grabs attention for food. But again, a lot of levers built into Oats Overnight to do so. Own manufacturing, we can really showcase that like we do now, and also speaking to the R&D as well as the team.
Can you expand on iterative as a core value?
Absolutely. By the way, core values I used to think were such kind of bullshit. People put like integrity on the wall or whatever. It's like we should all have integrity, of course, by default. But I've come to learn core values is something beyond your function that you do. You got to be good at your job, right? Your functional area. But beyond that, what are some of the attributes that will make you succeed here and also grow? So iterative is one of the big ones. I think any growing company needs to bake that into the culture because processes work until they don't. You double in size, that old tool, that old system breaks down. You have to rethink it, reimagine it. And so setting that expectation at scale with your team and your employees is so important. So they embody that. I think people are generally resistant to change. So being over the top with embracing change and just the need to iterate, I think sets everybody up for success where they otherwise may have not been. So we're iterative with all things. I mean, our creative, we're producing 10 plus net new pieces of creative a week. Internally, we use some outsourced resources as well. We're iterative with product. We're tweaking products in market and measuring those changes in response. And iterative with process at scale as well. By the way, are we having connection issues by chance? I'm seeing skip a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 1 second. I don't know why I did that. These Bose headphones, I think it's my fault. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect. Right. Yeah. Right, you haven't skipped at all for me in terms of your talking. I just saw your video skip a couple times. I wasn't sure if that was
it might be because gosh, this is so annoying. These headphones are connected to both my phone and computer. And sometimes what happens, actually I did turn it off prior to this, but like Bluetooth with my phone. But what has happened before is someone will call me on my phone and then it switches to my phone and it then won't switch back. And I did take Bluetooth off, but it still decided that it wanted to try to like accept the call and and like be part of it. So I apologize. Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine.
No, that makes that makes a lot of sense in terms of like I'd imagine with iteration too, because what's really also interesting about how you've built this company is because you're vertically integrated, is that you are probably innovative on every part up and down the supply chain, also on the marketing side.
Absolutely.
Because you control the majority of the product.
Right. And I think that's the piece, right? Is I think we think about this from like a systems perspective. You want to continuously improve all things. And the more you own, the more you can continuously improve, right? And also the more synergies you can find to build something that's not new for the consumer. And so owning manufacturing, if you can tweak an element of your manufacturing that can differentiate the product, that makes you harder to follow by the field that's all working with the same contract manufacturer, same format, like that's a huge win that you can't find elsewhere. We've built, the fact that we own our own fulfillment, manufacturing, procurement, R&D lets us tweak products in market, lets us see those early signals, lets us be very iterative with product format. I mean, we're by version 15 of Blueberry Cobbler. We'd be the worst, partner for a contract manufacturer. They just wouldn't be able to get it right. And so we can do all these things and continuously improve the product with efficiency at scale, all because we own all the inputs. And I think that's been something that we've leveraged for success.
Why has Oats Overnight worked so well on the online on the DTC channel? Because usually in CPG the thinking is, hey, your basket sizes are not going to be big enough where online makes sense, and there's a lot of challenges that can go with DTC as well. And most people shop grocery obviously in stores. Why has online worked so well for you all?
Yeah, online you need a lot of things. You need to have a product that can drive creative, that's curious enough to grab attention. You need a product that's sticky enough that could potentially have a subscription model, most likely have a subscription model to drive repeat. And you need the frequency last to get the consumption to be high enough where you can bundle a month's supply with a reasonable AOV that justifies your investment acquisition cost. And so we definitely have all of those things. We talk about how weird it is to drink your oatmeal that usually stops the scroll and grabs attention, lots of flavors. We bake some of these things into the marketing well, and then the product's just very good, and it keeps getting better, given that we own the R&D and keep iterating on that product formula, or all the product formulas. And so frequency, like 72% of our customers eat 3 to 6 times a week, which really helps with frequency. So we're able to we're able to encourage a subscription offer up front. Something like 89% of our customers subscribe on first purchase. Of course, we're really generous with refunds and cancellations if customers want that. So just risk reducing up front, getting people to subscribe on first purchase really helps with that retention rate, helps with the cohort paybacks.
Makes a lot of sense. Why did it make sense to raise venture funding for this?
So we're running a really heavy operation. Everything that we're investing in, from like the team, the equipment, R&D. The facilities, it's really heavy. So we've raised quite a lot of money, like near $100 million. Not quite there, but our balance sheet is close to that. So we've used it pretty efficiently. Definitely minimal cash burn. We're now profitable. But a lot of investment into making this machine run. And so again, I think what we're excited about moving forward is building new products, building more of a platform around the data that we collect. We probably have one of the more interesting zero-party data sets of any CPG brand. Tying formula attributes through version control and tying that to craveability and ultimately retention. And so we know, between like sweeteners, sugars, sodium ratios, which are optimal for driving high repeat, by flavor. Also tracking a lot of really unique data around consumer preferences and, who likes what. So we're getting really good with segmentation around our flavors and good with iteration to maximize LTV.
How do you think about testing SKUs? What's the process there?
Yeah, so we track as many early signals to retention as possible. So we track both feedback and behavior. Feedback, we built the stars and notes tool in our portal. It's custom, so customers can basically star rate flavors they like. They can leave notes on flavors so it tracks through their shopping experience. We timestamp those. And so we can track those pre and post formula changes and scrape sentiment to understand, the context of, if people like the cookie flavor more in cookies and cream after we made the change, how that star rating changed, like basically the feedback they're telling us. We're also tracking behavior in terms of, what they do more than what they say. And, beyond for that, it's swaps activity. So we have like 60 different flavors. Customers are really active with their subscription at Oats Overnight. I think, every month they're in there, they're getting 12 flavors on average per box. They're customizing their box every shipment. And so we're tracking after changes within that 30-day period, what they're swapping out of more than, relative to the rest. And so we've built what we call the flavor command center that basically stack ranks all of the flavors by these churn indicators. And so we can basically say, hey, we reformulated maple pancakes. It used to be the 18th highest retaining flavor. It's now the 12th. So we know that reformulation was favorable for retention on a 30-day window. And so these really early signals are helpful to basically make changes, see the impact, and continue to apply those more broadly. Also, it helps with reformulating SKUs, bottom quartile. We'll either rationalize those SKUs, scrap them, or reformulate them.
That makes sense. I'd imagine once you get into retail, I know you all are in retail, even though you started off, D2C, but once you get into retail, obviously, I'd imagine it changes and maybe a lot of testing goes on D2C and then maybe hero products go into retail. Is that roughly kind of correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So we use, D2C is much more rich data than retail, of course, but these learnings flow through to the retail product. We also know when we're building out the shelf of flavors, we know which flavors may be more incremental based on how the baskets are being created on our customer orders on D2C. So we have a lot of rich data that we still can apply to kind of figure out what's the most incremental set of flavors to have on shelves at different partners. Of course, also, to the extent we can get some of those retailers' data, we can really curate selections for them.
Got it. That makes sense. Well, when did you all head into retail?
Yeah, so my first buyer meeting ever was with Walmart in Bentonville in like 2019, and wow. It's very intimidating. I was terrified, frankly. So classic, like take a number, get in line, tiny little conference room. We had the pouch and shaker cup at the time, and what the concern with going into retail was this pouch, the shaker cup that we have here in the pouch. We couldn't merchandise the shaker, of course, in Walmart's hot cereal set. And so the concern was, will customers know that with this pouch, they need to add milk, they can't use water, they need a shaker cup, they can't use a bowl, all these things that made it so clunky for a customer to understand, without the video and all the education we can share online. And we knew plenty of customers were having trouble with that, even online with the video. So we reformulated into a single serve bottle with a powdered oat milk mixed in, so you could add water to a fill line. Basically an all-in-one solution that scrapped the need for the shaker cup, scrapped the need for the milk. So it's pretty foolproof. The problem was we had never sold one of these bottles in history. so the one small problem. So we went to the Walmart meeting, and I have our pouch and all of our data. We had a deck, and then I have this like taped up prototype bottle that I'm like, yeah, this is doing great online, but you really should carry this for these reasons. And the buyer actually coincidentally was her first buyer meeting ever as well. She had just joined the desk, and so it was a pretty funny one. But she basically said, hey, we're not interested in the bottle, we want the pouch. And it was I'm like, oh no, what do we do? So it was a really tough one. I tried to explain, why the pouch wouldn't work as well and all the things, but we ended up, at a bit of a standstill. Again, I had no idea how to proceed because we didn't think the pouch would be best. We wanted to hold out for the bottle. And so we had some conversations, with our broker partners and then COVID happened. And so, kind of good timing in this exact moment because it kind of pushed these conversations down the road. We had time to better commercialize the bottle, get a real label on there, and also ended up launching first with Wegmans. So we got a couple proof points before going back to Walmart shortly after. But Walmart was a really early partner with us. They've been a great partner. They leaned in super early, with that retail grocery bottle format. And so we launched nationwide with Walmart pretty early in the journey, which is again unique for a CPG.
What was that like sticking to your gut in terms of this format we think is going to work in retail, even though this is our, it's maybe not, this is just kind of the concept, this kind of duct tape version of the concept that you presented. But what was that like? A buyer telling you, no, we want obviously the product that is doing so well online and everything. What was that like for you? Just pushing back, and then even though you have Walmart kind of wanting your product to come in, but not the product that you actually want to be in the store.
It's tough, right? I mean, I think it's easier when you have more data to support it. It's harder when you don't, and it's all hunch. I think for this moment, it was somewhere in between. The fortunate thing is I'd been answering Facebook comments personally for, the 3 or 4 years leading up to this conversation. And so I had, seen hundreds of points of confusion with the prep, even with all the video and all the instructions. So I just knew for a fact that sitting that pouch on shelf with no supplementary instruction or information, it would have been really tough. So again, the context being so close to the business helped me build that confidence for sure. There's certainly elements of the business that I'd have less confidence in, given proximity, but this one was a clear one, I think, from the beginning.
Got it. No, that's helpful. I mean, and obviously, not that anyone is wishing that COVID ever happened, but at the same time, the fact that it did happen at that particular moment, it was very beneficial not to take the Walmart deal, I'd imagine, in 2019, and instead launch, of course, after COVID in Wegmans. What has been your philosophy or approach when it comes to retail expansion? I'm like, for example, you just got into Wegmans, you're going through Wegmans. When does it make sense to expand stores, store counts if you're able to, or even bring on another retail buyer?
Yeah, so we wanted to grow fast. I think since we were D2C first, we've already built this awareness with all the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok ads. Of course, we're still unknown to many, but at this time we had a lot of impression share through this, and I think this is something that has changed a bit in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. The thoughts around it. I think historically, it used to be go regional, crush it regionally with your food product, and then really expand outward from there. But being nationwide with broad audiences on direct response media really paves the way to have awareness when you go on shelf nationwide. So we wanted to move fast. We kind of took most opportunities. Of course, some, if slotting didn't make sense, we'd hold off. It's not like we were looking to burn money in a big way. But our philosophy has just been to get everywhere. We think that makes our ads more effective. Not everybody buys food online. Of course, a lot of people see our ads and, just won't buy food, let alone drinkable oatmeal online for $45. But when they see it on shelf for $3, they're certainly willing to try it and sample it. So we found a lot of synergies between our online, offline channels that have kind of further pushed up AOVs on the D2C side, pushed up pack sizes to complement that a little more.
Since you have all this on online awareness that you've done, and it's so interesting because I've had so many companies and also investors come on and say, oh, you got to go one brick at a time, one store at a time, and kind of making sure your velocities and sell-through is all kind of working before you expand, where I really, really appreciate your perspective of, hey, we want to go wide. This is the reason why we want to go wide, because we already have so much brand awareness built online, and it actually makes our product just a lot more accessible. Also being in a store, another way that people who are interested would want to shop for the product. What is it like managing, or that marriage between online marketing and trying to get people maybe to come in store and actually purchase your product, and actually driving that awareness and having that lead into in-store sales?
Yeah, I think, this is another thing where I think a lot of brands kind of get this wrong and force purchase paths. Like, they may have a slightly higher margin on D2C, so they're trying to QR code someone back to their website. They want them to reorder there. We think that's a big mistake. We're big believers that you want to be as many places as possible, make it easy for the customer to find you, but then the lowest friction path to purchase is what you should stick to. So, if a customer does their Amazon, Amazon is probably our least favorite channel to be acquired on, right? But slightly lower margin. But if a customer grocery shops on Amazon, like, we want you to buy on Amazon. We don't want you to have to maintain a subscription separately, and then you end up canceling that because it's a hassle, and you buy our competitor next time you're grocery shopping. It's so I'd say that we just look at this as very synergistic, and again, want to be everywhere. We do love to differentiate the offering slightly, like I mentioned, having that retail specific product really kind of takes the channel conflict out of it, right? Pricing is different. It's a different product. And so it makes it easier to go fast and grow these channels without having like products just copy pasted across the different channels.
What are some of the differences being in grocery stores versus being in mass chains like a Walmart or a Target?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that slightly different for us. It's a slightly different flavor set. Like we have, like vegan offerings and Sprouts. We have slightly lower velocities, certainly in some of the grocery outlets than we do in some of the mass chains like Walmart and Target. Those foot traffic in those sets is slightly lower. But overall, we look at them pretty similarly from the sales perspective.
Okay, got it. But in terms of like
yeah,
marketing, do you? Yeah.
I was going to say that I'm like not super close to understand really the grocery mass differences. So I just
that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Yeah. That's totally fine. Can you walk us a little bit through as well the manufacturing journey? Because I think, do you have 3 facilities? Is that right?
We have 2 facilities. Yeah.
2 facilities. Excuse me. Okay. When did it make sense to expand to the second facility? That's the Ohio facility, right?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that journey like when it came to why open like a second facility? And why also when I know that you started vertical from the get-go and it was forced upon you. Co-mans weren't interested in terms of working with this product. This product was very challenging. Once you grew to a certain scale, did you ever think, hey, maybe actually we should maybe take a load off and actually use a co-man, maybe not exclusively, maybe we also manufacture, but we actually bring a co-manufacturing partner and not actually own everything?
Yeah, we've once we sort of figured it out and built the team around it, we've got really great leadership on that side of the business. Our COO is ex-Glanbia. He's done this a lot at a world-class level before. He's phenomenal. Vincent Comerford. Once we got this dialed, the benefits became clear. We're not paying a third party's margin. We're at cost on everything, labor, inputs. We can schedule our own line time. We can build new rooms, hire a new team quickly. And so we were already seeing the benefits to the point where there was no turning back. One of the things that we learned as we scaled, because we didn't just go to Ohio right away. When we were, in a first 2,000 square foot facility, we moved to a 10,000 square foot facility in Arizona, something like a year after. And then from there, we just splintered off into these 20,000 square foot facilities, all in this clustered, 2-mile radius, out of need, right? We were growing fast and needed space. There wasn't adjoining space, so we had to go find something next door. That was a cluster. It was, we had all this intra-freight and managing, all the different staging for materials, the quarantine, the incoming, all the testing. We didn't have the space to do it efficiently, so it was a very inefficient operation with 5 different facilities in Arizona. We recently consolidated those facilities into one 90,000 square foot facility that I'm in today, which helped. And then we opened Ohio, which is over 300,000 square feet, which is just a beautiful, huge facility in Cincinnati. That the benefit there, the real intention for Ohio was really shipping cost savings. The reason we wanted to go to the other side of the country is 70% of our orders would originate more cheaply from the Midwest or somewhere in Pennsylvania. Just with the direct business, shipping as a percentage of revenue is one of our biggest line items. And so this is a massive win, net all in, a 400 basis point margin win, just from turning the facility on. Lots more gains to capture as we get efficiency dialed in up there.
Got it. That makes got it. That's why Ohio makes a lot of sense in terms of cost savings when it comes to shipping.
Yeah, and another thing on that, by the way, something that we learned that might be interesting is the economic incentives to build were significant. So when we looked to build a facility, we looked at different states, different regions, different cities, and we actually ended up getting offers from different areas to support through payroll tax credits, grants to offset machinery investment. And Ohio is doing a lot of investment, at the state and local level to incentivize manufacturing job creation. And so lots of support from the government out there, which is really cool to see, and definitely something I'd encourage anyone who's looking to build a facility or expand. Make sure you don't bypass that economic incentive piece.
On the VC, that's great. On the VC capital raising side, did you ever get pushback from VCs that they don't want a heavy CapEx business to invest in, and they just want to invest in maybe like the brand and not also like a manufacturer?
Yeah, when we were building this from the start, we heard that a lot. It was like an asset light world, right? I think there were a bunch of examples of private equity buying a company, like divesting the manufacturing side and flipping it. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I think that narrative's changed a lot. We've seen a lot of challenges on the supply chain front, a lot of 1 in 100 year supply chain crises, and I think now strategics and most buyers of businesses understand how valuable it is to control its supply chain, have a lot of ownership there, and so I think that pendulum has definitely shifted, and I think VCs are taking note.
Yeah, I think so too. I also had on. A while ago, I had on George Milton from Yellowbird Sauce, and he also is vertically integrated. They also have their own manufacturing facility. And getting to raise money from the beginning was, I think, very challenging, just because it was asset heavy. But then that seemed to flip around maybe like after COVID. That kind of flipped when it came to investors, and investors that said no to him because they were asset heavy were like, oh, actually, I'm interested. And he's like, wait, what? So anyway.
And even it's not just owning the manufacturing, it's the relationships that you get through owning the manufacturing, because we have, imagine we have direct relationships with all of our different suppliers. And so if there's, issues, we had an oat shortage a couple of years ago where there was a drought that impacted yield. And so, through that time, of course, we're able to navigate this way better than our competitors that are relying on a third party to manage these relationships on their behalf. And so, again, we've had very good success with keeping supply, keeping stock, even through all these challenges, because of the ownership and the relationships.
Are you also now at this stage like buying like futures and notes and different commodities, or no?
Not yet. No, we do price, or we do take positions on different materials based on where we think the market's going, and so we're not quite doing any like hedging or any other like financial things like that. But we will take, we'll spot buy versus contract according to where we think the market's going, and our team's pretty good at that.
I mean, maybe the answer is everything, because I can't imagine how difficult it is having your own manufacturing plant. But what is the biggest challenge when it comes to, I mean, I know you talked about all the opportunities and all the benefits of owning your own manufacturing. Mm-hmm. For you, maybe from a planning perspective, what tends to be the biggest challenge?
On the manufacturing specifically, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's the processes. We are one. We're one manufacturing operation, we're one fulfillment operation. And so as we scale and double the business, year over year, and have all this growth, we're constantly breaking the processes that served us in the last chapter and entering the new one. So I think if you're working with a big contract manufacturer, there's probably a little more flexibility in how they manage your scale. Of course, if you have the right type of partner. For us though, it's been breaking down systems, rebuilding those systems in real time. And so what that looks like is we often have to build, a year or two ahead to make sure that we can still maintain, quality consistency and all that, because our quality programs are really tight. So it's a lot. It's very heavy in that way. It is a separate business, I should add. I mean, this is something that, we feel like we have two businesses, right? We have like the brand and we have the manufacturing, fulfillment, warehousing operation. And oftentimes there's a lot of overlap, but they are run almost separately, even though the teams are very tight. Yeah.
On the manufacturing side, are you also the co-mans for other brands, or no?
No, we've considered that at times when we overbuilt supply, but we've had the fortunate problems of the growth coming and always needing to find more capacity. Yeah.
How do you think as well about balancing flavors? Because you have a lot of flavors and different SKUs. I know that you talked about iterations, and this is also based upon feedback and what customers want, which I love that you mentioned how the first few years you were kind of answering and also consuming all the comments and what customers wanted and the feedback and everything. But how do you actually manage that? Because especially when you're doing your own manufacturing, like, how do you create a test? How do you think about it, innovation or iteration in that regard?
Yeah, so our supply chain side of the business is a little crazy. I think we release one new flavor every single month, and then we're also developing for release a second flavor every single month through our flavor and development program. So we're effectively launching 2 new SKUs a month, which is just absurd by any count. We have 13 full-time food scientists that are working on the roadmap, and so we have the next 2. You'd think you'd run out of flavors eventually, but we still have 24 months slotted, so we're still looking good. But yeah, it's every month of our customers, our subscribers get a new pack of a flavor in development. We then survey those customers to understand if they liked it, they didn't like it. We scrap the ones that they don't like. Most of them make it through, sometimes with some tweaks based on that survey feedback. And then so we'll relaunch those flavors after we sample them with our subscribers. We'll launch them like 4 or 5 months later with the tweaks. And so customers are really part of that product development experience, which again builds a lot of connectivity. The supply chain side of that, of course, is crazy because we have to produce full product even for the sample, the FID, where it's still a full scale run with unique packaging and nutrition facts panel and ingredient decks and all that stuff. So it's a big ask on the supply chain side, and again, another reason we like to own it because we can uniquely deliver this for customers.
Yeah, it makes. Has there been a SKU that you've been surprised it hasn't worked or hasn't been given hasn't been great feedback, or is it, hey, this hasn't worked, let's iterate and get the flavor better and better and better, or what the customers want until it works?
Yeah, it's case by case. I mean, there's some that, like I hate mint chocolate chip. It's one of our best performing launches ever. I also don't like banana flavors, but, our banana flavors are quite good. They seem to do very well, like banana pudding and some others. I think we had a root beer float flavor that was a massive hit, it seemed. But, it was very, very niche. We had some big positive feedback from some of the people in our Facebook VIP group. We have a VIP group, by the way, of like 100,000 private group with 100,000 members on Facebook. So a lot of our conversation happens in that group around what we're developing next. A good way to build community, by the way. But yeah, so there's been some surprises and some hits, but overall, if a flavor scores really poorly, we'll just scrap it. If a flavor scores well, but there's room for improvement, we'll tweak it. Sometimes that decision is made based on like what's more incremental for the catalog as well. Because at 60 flavors, the 61st is it's got to be something interesting to make it worth the ad.
Totally. I know on the financing side, have you has the business ever almost, I know that the business seems to be in a very good spot now, but has there been moments in the business that you've all almost ran out of money?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I think early on, again, we've been in a very healthy place like last 4 or 5 years. Early on, though, our model of poker player turned oatmeal entrepreneur doesn't necessarily fit the pattern recognition that makes consumer VCs build confidence out the gate. So we really had to prove it through our data over time. I also, as an outsider, didn't have those relationships with VCs, and so I had to kind of break in and just get to meet people and really just share projections, hear no a lot of times, and then show up later, share a projection again, and they say, oh, you hit your numbers, or you beat your numbers, like build confidence that way. But that took time, and there were a lot of points where I had to fund it myself. I had a friend that funded early on, or like our seed round. We became friends, a bit of an outsider to CPG, but he led our seed and ended up supporting in some financing shortly after. So we were very scrappy, raising from uncommitted funds and different different vehicles before we got real visibility in the space.
It's very hard to make CPG profitable. How do you think about profitability?
So yeah, we take a long-term approach. The whole growth versus profitability trade-off it's like an age-old challenge, right? I think we really focus on margin. So like we're focused more on we are EBITDA positive this year. We're focused more on margin expansion though than EBITDA. I think marketing spend, of course, is still important to us as long as we're spending that efficiently. And for us, we think about payback periods on CAC investment, and so we target a 4-month payback period on our acquisition cost. which we think is still pretty conservative. It lets us grow at this rate, and gain that impression share, but also be efficient on the bottom line. So, really hyper focused on margin. Another reason we love owning manufacturing, owning fulfillment. We can do all these margin improvement projects, across the business, that really helps with margin expansion.
How helpful have your investors been?
Varying degrees of helpful, for sure. I think everyone's been helpful, as in, intros when needed, friendly referral, back channeling hires, for a certain, back channeling references for a hire. So I think they've been pretty helpful. We've been lucky to have a bunch of good supporters around the table and a really strong board.
Cool. Since you're now EBITDA positive, what's your philosophy on future fundraising?
Yeah, we don't plan to raise again. I think it's for us, it's kind of a never say never thing with that, because of course, with really outsized growth, if we want to go international, new product lines hit, new product expansions hit, there could be opportunity to raise more money and go faster. But we don't have any plans to raise capital in the future.
Got it.
And I think the other thing to add there, by the way, would be, debt has been really helpful, given that our balance sheet's pretty heavy. We carry a lot of inventory. We have an ABL facility that's been great, and has really kind of put more mileage behind our equity capital that we've raised and dumped into the balance sheet. And so that's been something. It's a lot of extra effort, managing all the different filings and reporting requirements to manage
covenants.
Like that. But yeah, exactly. But overall, it's been a great tool to getting more leverage out of the equity capital.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the equity, I imagine then you're spending it predominantly on marketing and also SG&A costs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's generally true. But for the most part, our big financings, our A and our B, were dumped into TI and inventory and more equipment.
Oh, okay.
And then the ABL would kind of unlock the availability there, which we can then spend through to get more range on our marketing investment. And so
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Have there been any high risk bets that have paid off besides starting the business, but any marketing, any marketing campaigns, for example, that were kind of more like high risky in terms of trying to build influence or anything that actually ended up paying off?
Yeah, so we got one that didn't pay off. That's super interesting. That's probably worth covering. One of our other core values is rational, and we think process versus results. So we're very process oriented. This is a pokerism where I think too many people make decisions, rate the quality of a decision by the outcome, and oftentimes the outcome is highly variable and isn't really tied to the quality of the decision. So you really need to be process focused and focus on inputs. One of the ideas for our refund policy, which is super generous, we had an idea on the team, like how do we make this obvious that we'll just give you your money back if you ask, like no questions asked. We're just going to be super generous and just refund you. If everyone knew that pre-purchase, our CAC would be so much lower because there'd be no stress around buying the product. And money back guarantee does not necessarily mean money back guarantee. Consumers are hesitant even with that language. What are the things you got to jump through? And so we had this idea to come up with this campaign called we call it scammer ads, where we basically encouraged our customers to scam us and just buy the product, ask for a refund. And we built this series of ad creative that basically, like UGC, this Gen Z influencer saying like, I know how to get free oatmeal. Check out oatsovernight.com. I ordered a 24 pack, so I'm going to get my money back anyway. I just ask for a refund. They'll give it to you, no questions asked. Like, this is their policy. Go order quick before they change the policy. So we had a whole series of these ads. Of course, some of the team was like, this is a terrible idea. I think our agency we work with was like, I got to go on record, Brian, and saying this is awful. And we loved it though, because our refund rate was like 1.5% of the time. That could triple and still be very profitable if CAC came down 25%. And so we were pretty optimistic about the process here to get to this idea. Of course, the problem is we'd see the CAC reduction right away. We launched it, CAC came down like 35-40%, smashed it right out the gate. Problem is, of course, you don't get the cohort data until like that month one renewal. And so we were holding on tight for the first 30 days. And I'll tell you, like, people definitely scammed us. They definitely, like, the refund rate went to like something like 25-30%. I forget the exact. It went so high. I mean, these cohorts will forever have an asterisk next to them because they're so red. And it was just a massive loss for the business. But the best part about this, and the reason I like to share it, is culturally, this was still a win. Like, even though the outcome was bad, we still talk about this as a win in terms of taking shots if the bet's intentional. And we've got a bunch, we call them GBSIs, great big stupid ideas. We encourage these ideas from all over the org. And there's some wins too. Like, we removed our starter pack offering at a time where CAC was elevated. We killed our lowest price intro offering, which pretty counterintuitive, but this was part of that theme of going into higher AOVs, more subscription on first purchase. And that changed the business radically. I don't know that we'd be here if we hadn't made that bet, which again, also got a lot of pushback internally. So we do a lot of things that look a little crazy. Of course, we're big fans of testing and learning when you can unwind.
From a growth marketing perspective, do you have any opinions or thoughts that you think are actually quite different in terms of the general, what generally people think about growth marketing?
Yeah, one of them that comes to mind is this is a little maybe a little controversial, but we like to throw out the brand guidelines when it comes to creative on growth marketing. Like, intentionally have no brand guidelines. I think a lot of brands that we've seen try to stick to like a similar feel or a similar text or colors or whatever it is. But we want our ads for creative diversity and incremental reach. We want our ads to look and feel different. And if you think about when you order something online, you don't often remember the ad. You remember the email follow-up, you remember the unboxing experience, you remember the product experience, but you don't really remember that ad that made you purchase, at least not with a lot of specificity. And so based on how these algorithms work, you want to create as different feeling ads as possible, the widest range possible. And so we have like a very scattered media mix, creative mix, and that's intentionally done that way. And I think a lot of brands handcuff themselves when the brand marketing team is too heavy on the growth side.
I love that. I think that's great. What does the next 5-10 years look like? What in terms of wanting to achieve, and who do you think is like your real competition at this point, or does it not, or you're not really thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sit in a weird set where we're competing with Kodiak Cakes and Quaker and the hot cereal set and grocery and mass. We're competing with Premier Protein and Premier Nutrition, Orgain and Fairlife in Costco in section 20 in the supplements, more RTD protein shakes. So we kind of sit in between a lot of categories, and I think that helps us. So I think in terms of competition as a business, we think about us, we're serving food at scale, healthy food to the country. So I like to set our sights higher and think that our competition is more the bigger strategics. We want to build something that uses more of a platform approach for good reason, though I think the platform approach is a little played out. But we feel we have a reason to exist as a platform with the data that we collect and how we're able to build products with customers. And so 5 years from now, and certainly beyond, we want to be multi-product, serving, high protein products with extreme flavor variety, direct to consumer, and the best of those making their way into retail stores. But basically making it easier to get your protein in, be healthy, and building products that people crave and can stick to.
Is the goal then to still be independent?
Yeah, we're a lot of thoughts on that. I think back and forth internally, of course, a lot of different opinions. We're definitely at the stage where there's there's interest in some sort of partnership, but we're also we do want to stay independent for now. There's a lot to build, a lot to prove out as well. So we're excited to go capture that upside and build it.
Cool. What's one book that's inspired you personally and one book that's inspired you professionally?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think The Rise of Superman personally. I love flow states, this concept of flow states and being in this generative state. I think The Rise of Superman kind of examines extreme sports athletes and how, pushing your body to the limits forces you into this into this flow state. It also talks about ways to kind of tap into flow states outside of, putting your life on the line. I think that's been a really good one. And also just kind of goes into how we build our org. The types of people, types of leaders that we build, that we hire. We want to make sure that they're going to be adding to the potential for flow states and group settings. That's been a big unlock for us. Professionally, this one's tough. I think Who was a great book for hiring. I think, in the early days, we were pretty bad at the interview process. I think I was just, talking to people and getting a feel, but adding more structure around interviews and more process there has helped us, find better talent. And so Who has a really good framework for hiring process.
That's great. Well, thank you, Brian. I don't think we've had anyone mention these two books. So you are very original. Thank you. Brian, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Definitely fun to be on, and hope you have a good Christmas.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. I hope you loved it. And if you do love it, then you'll subscribe at theconsumervc.com to the newsletter. Thanks for listening.